This is Psychology 6900 Research Methods, and I'd like to talk about how to critically evaluate a study. Now, this is a tremendously valuable skill, not only because you'll be required to do it in many of your psychology classes, but also it trains you to think in an analytical way so that when you read a newspaper or magazine story or see a report of research on the news, you'll automatically begin to think, well, did they take all these different things into account? So let's give an example. Let's say Smith and Jones administer the Jones Personality Inventory to 500 inpatients who have a diagnosis of cancer. And they end up finding an elevation on a personality scale that reflects a tendency to repress emotions. So they call this type R personality, and they come to the conclusion that emotional repression causes cancer. So how would we critique this study? Well, let's start out with what they assumed. They figured, well, people got a high score on this scale, so emotional repression must lead to cancer. A leads to B. Well, now let's consider some alternative explanations for the relationship between cancer and the test score. Maybe B leads to A. Everyone that they gave the test to already had cancer, so maybe after they got the diagnosis of cancer, then they started to repress their emotions. Maybe it was a coping mechanism. So it's possible that the cause and effect relationship is in the opposite direction. Well, let's try another idea. Maybe A causes C and C causes B. In other words, maybe there's some extraneous variable, some additional variable that hasn't been accounted for that explains the relationship. So maybe people that repress their emotions are more likely to smoke, and maybe smoking causes cancer. So that's an alternative explanation. And here's some other things we'd want to consider. What's the validity of the dependent variable? What do we know about the Jones personality inventory? Are we actually measuring what everyone would agree on is emotional repression? And even if it did show to be a valid scale in another circumstance, was it valid for this population? Did the people that took it speak English? Did they have an adequate reading level? Did they have any motivation to not answer it accurately? So we have to ask, was the dependent variable valid? How about the independent variable? That would be the next thing we asked. Well, in this experiment, there's no comparison group. So there's a lot of reasons why the test scores could differ from the test norms. Maybe the inpatients or residents of this region of the country have a type R personality. Personality varies according to what state you live in and your level of education, a lot of different factors. So maybe this was some characteristic of this particular group. We also have to ask, how was the diagnosis determined? Do we really know that these people had cancer? What type of cancer? Was it based on their own report? Maybe they thought they had cancer, or maybe they're in remission. There are a lot of questions that we'd want to ask about how we got the information. Now, sampling. How were the participants obtained? This is always an important question, and it's why it's very important in a research study to describe how you got your subjects. Maybe they placed an ad in a magazine that tailors to people who have been diagnosed with cancer, or maybe they put up posters on a college campus, or maybe they put up posters in the hospital, or maybe they went room to room in a hospital. So in each of those cases, you'd get a different type of person volunteering for the study, and the sample selection can affect the results. So how would we improve on this study? Well, here would be a way to do it. Start out with a sample of healthy individuals that's representative of the general population. Administer valid measures of personality characteristics that we have some suspicion might relate to the later development of cancer. Obtain medical records for these individuals 20 years later and see if those who eventually developed cancer had different pre-morbid personality traits than other people did. And we'd also try to control for confounding variables. So maybe people who are more likely to develop cancer can't be located, or maybe they died. We also have to account for smoking, other personal habits, what people have a greater likelihood of seeing a doctor. Maybe some people have cancer, but it's never been diagnosed. So all of those factors have to be accounted for in our study. So just as a general approach, when you're reading a research study, think, is there any other way that these results could have come about apart from what the researchers say is the reason, and are all the measures and manipulations done in the research valid?